He has made local, regional and international news headlines. He has also trended on the streets of social media, particularly Twitter and Facebook, when he was arrested before, and also for being a young political activist with a voice which is speaking for the young Zimbabwean who are aiming for change. The show is Big Talk, and my name is Tinembo Chibagidi. Today on the show, I'm joined by a vibrant and passionate young man named Takudzwa Ngadziore. Takudzwa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And the show is brought to you by the Citizens Voice Network, which is a young, vibrant media organization that captures everyday stories and brings the point of the underrepresented onto the national platform. We're simply trying to tell the Zimbabwean story, the Zimbabwean way. So Takudzwa, I've mentioned in our introduction that you've been arrested. I'm sure so many people can relate your name to Takudzwa being the young political activist who was arrested. Or maybe, I don't know if you actually identify as a political activist. So I'm sure our audience want to really know, who is Takudzwa Ngadziore, apart from what we see on Google when we type your name. Who is Takudzwa?
So my political identity, I identify myself as a devoted academic freedom fighter, as a dedicated social justice warrior, and also as a committed human rights defender. So that guides my political identity as a young person.
Okay, as you had it, I simply had said political activist, but then there's some academics that's being put into the mix, and this is how Takudzwa actually identifies himself. And at what stage in your life? You know, when we grow up, there's always a point where we write what you want to be when you grow up. Was this part of the aspirations, or was it part of the dream growing up? Or I'm sure at some point, maybe being in your late teens, that's when it all came to life. When did this idea of getting involved in the political arena start? So
I think, like many other Zimbabweans, young people have managed to grow up in a tattered political and social fabric space in which they are trying to rise, to break the ceiling, but you are not going to do that particularly. So I'm one of those people who managed to become a political activist, like I've said in my identity, at a young age. I have been a leader throughout, but my understanding of leadership being the assumption of responsibility and not the accumulation of power. So I've been at the center of leading even in high school, in primary school. I've been in junior parliament, in junior council. I've been a student representative council president. I've led the biggest students movement in Zimbabwe, which is the Zimbabwe National Students Union. And now I have a new task and a new role.
Okay, so from being from the junior parliament to Zinasu, and to now being in the actual political arena, because I'm sure the junior parliament is different, although it then braces you for what you're getting yourself into. It's different. So well done, mister.
Thank you.
And at some point you were arrested. So we were laughing behind the scenes. We're laughing about Takudzwa being arrested and the whole experience, being handcuffed and then being taken to the remand prison. Can you shed more light on this arrest? Why were you arrested, and how was the whole experience? The moment I see it, RP gentlemen or ladies, I'm scared already. So I don't know how your experience was from the moment you were I'm not sure if you were handcuffed. From the moment you were handcuffed and then taken to the remand prison, what was the experience and what were the reasons behind your arrest?
Yeah, so I guess I have been handcuffed and I've also had leg irons on. I was arrested at a young age of 20 for voicing out against the fees hikes that were announced by ZimSec. I was arrested at 21, at 22 I was also arrested for months. But I've told myself that the moment you become an activist, especially in an authoritarian regime, your fear for three things should disappear like a moth drawn to the flames. It's the fear for prison, it's the fear for the hospital, and the fear of the cemetery that should disappear. And I have been on that path. I have been abducted, I've been tortured, and I've been arrested. I have spent months and months in prison by, voicing out against the abduction of Wanda Mcheiwa, a 22-year-old student by year 20 2020 and 2021 who was trying to break the buccal cavities of oppression, but then was abducted and tortured, and we had to voice out as a student movement. So I've been there in the dungeons of terror of Emerson Mnangagwa, and that has never breaked my spirit.
I need to point out and just cut you a bit. The way you say I was arrested, I even had leg irons on. You're talking about it so calmly and collected, as if it was just a simple thing like, okay, I just got bread at the supermarket. So, but how has been the experience from being arrested? Like you said, it wasn't once.
Yeah.
So how has been the experience from every single time, and what light does it shine on the state, the political environment in Zimbabwe?
In terms of the political environment, it tells you about the political decay. It tells you that we have leaders who have reneged from the values and ethos of the liberation struggle. It also tells you that we have a shrinking civic and democratic space. The atmosphere is being suffocated each and every particular day. But from dusk to dawn, we ought to then stand up and rise up as young people who are allergic to oppression, repression, and suppression. So being there in prison is not something that should put fear in me as a young person. This has happened before. In history, we have had in particularly 1999 Iran, young people were standing up. 2013, we had the streets of Ferguson being filled with young people. The Soweto uprising, 1960, the 70s, we had young people standing up. So it's not a new thing for young people like me to stand up and, answer to the dictates of the day. It is the duty of each and every young person to state, define, redefine, and respond to the national question, to reaffirm their response to whatever that's happening in the national discourse. And I'm simply doing that.
Okay. You've mentioned young people, that it's our duty as young people to actually be questioning the status quo and also be putting our voices out there of all the ailings that are in our society, the decay that our political environment has become. And you've also mentioned 1960, which also I'm sure when other people think about it brings back the memories of the Sharpeville massacre.
Yes.
But then young Zimbabweans, some would argue that we're only keyboard warriors. What we do most are hashtags, free Takudzwa, free Marco. That's what we do. But we don't actually be voicing out there. Some are not as bold as you are. And what's your take on that?
You can't deny that we are living in the fourth industrial revolution, in era with disruptive technologies, and social media is part of an integral cog to shape the revolutionary discourse that we are facing. So at the end of the day, being keyboard warriors is actually something that we should appreciate, because it has in its own way spiral and a snowball effect. When it comes to the revolution that happened in Zambia, we knew about it in Zimbabwe. When what was happening in Malawi was being shared on social media, we interacted with it on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, and all other platforms that you might think about. So social media and being a keyboard warrior is nothing wrong. It just tells you the passion and the change of times. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, like I have mentioned, and the modern times require us as young people to partake in that. It's only those with underdeveloped minds who think that we need to be stone age enough to engage in activism, not on social media. So social media is something that shapes the narrative and should be appreciated.
Okay. You've mentioned, when we started, you mentioned your journey, that you've been a leader for the great part of your life, and you're not stopping anytime now.
Yes.
So at what point in this journey, and even your political journey, at what point did you join the Citizens Coalition for Change?
I recently joined the Citizens Coalition for Change, and I'm the Citizens Coalition for Change Youth Taskforce Coordinator. This means that I have a responsibility to reaffirm young people's voice in line with Section 20 of the Constitution, which distinctifies young people as those within the ages of 15 to 35. But at this critical juncture of an election, those who vote are 18. So I respond to their needs, I respond to their questions, and I stand up to talk to their future.
Yeah, okay. And what has been your experience since your joining of CCC? What has been your experience interacting with the youth? Like, if you look at Zambia, for example, the young were not voting. They were not taking it to the poll because they just assumed it's going to be the same. What it was before is what it's going to be. But then they took it upon themselves to say, you know what, we need to take it to the poll and decide who will lead Zambia. So what has been your experience since your joining of CCC as the Youth Task Force leader? What has been your experience trying to just engage with the youth and also maybe let me use the word convince the young Zimbabweans, not necessarily just CCC members, but then the young Zimbabweans in general, that, you know what, we need to take these needs to vote, to register to vote, and then actually take it to the poll to decide who will lead Zimbabwe. What has been your experience so far?
So, politics, like any other aspect in life, it creates character. When you talk about Zambia, it's a society which is used to the transitional politics in which regimes have come and they've been going. In Zimbabwe, of course, we have had a dictatorship which then tried to paint itself from becoming, you know, the new dispensation, which turned out to become the new desperation. But it also tells you that... It
was new. I mean, it was new.
But it has now become a new desperation because it has not changed the concrete realities that young people, even the old, are facing. We still have a high inflation rate. We still have an unstable political and economic sector, a crumbling and plunging economic environment in which people cannot afford, even if you check the money that people get in terms of the wages and the salaries, it's not a quid pro quo approach in which people work, they sweat and they're remunerated. So it's a new desperation. But in terms of what we need to then do as young people, and what we're trying to do is to appeal to people who have not yet enjoyed the benefits of an election. So it simply means that you ought to appeal at a larger scale than other societies. It simply means that you ought to be innovative and creative in terms of getting young people participate into the political landscape. And I think we are gaining that momentum, and we are getting there because young people are getting that interest at this stage.
So prior to you joining the Citizens Coalition for Change, they did not have someone who actually had this position of the, remind me again, the Youth
Task Force Coordinator.
Task Force Coordinator. They didn't have anyone doing this. Don't you think that maybe it's a little bit too late with the elections probably in a few months from now?
It's not a little bit too late. The Citizens Coalition for Change is not a political party. It's a political movement. Political parties focus on elections, but movements focus on generations. So this tells you that with Advocate Nelson Chamisa as a movement leader, he was not at all too late to launch the CCC. It came at the right moment to respond to the contextual framework, the decays of the day, the troubles of the day, the questions that did not have answers. So me coming in as a youth leader just tells you that he recognizes the role that young people should take, but it's not at all too late because this movement has been there channeling and trying to change the narrative. But now it's just me coming in to reshape the narrative to say we need to do A, B, C, D, and these are the things that I think can work.
Okay. He's hopeful. I'm sure if there's hope for Israel, I'm sure there's hope for Zimbabwe also. Remember to like us, to retweet, to comment, and to share with your friends on the Citizens Voice Network pages, that is on Twitter, on Facebook, and you can also follow us on TikTok. Remember to like, retweet, share, and also put in your comments and your questions. So you recently launched REAP, that's R-E-A-P. What is REAP?
REAP is the Register, Elect and Protect campaign. It is an intergenerational consensus.
Okay, register,
elect and protect,
Register,
campaign.
Elect and Protect campaign. Okay.
Yes, it is an intergenerational consensus to win Zimbabwe for change and transformation, ushering in a new, prosperous, great Zimbabwe.
Okay, and how's the reception of this initiative, particularly among the young Zimbabweans?
One word would be exquisite, the other would be amazing. it's interesting that we have managed to get this hype and we have been received so well in communities. It is what they were waiting for, an initiative that galvanizes the support and their efforts that they are putting to intensify, number one, voter mobilization, number two, voter registration, and voter conscientization. So RIP has come in at a critical juncture, at a revolutionary stage that Zimbabwe is facing, and it is doing just that.
Okay. Given the grassroots engagement that you're doing, do you think that the Citizens Coalition for Change is aiming for success and they actually have this election, the next election in the bag? But I don't know but the fear of being cancelled by Zimbabweans because of where I come from. I'll not mention Kumsakwedu because you are known for all the wrong reasons.
Kumashingo, Kushi.
No?
Kushi.
Yeah. But anyway, Zimbabwe don't cancel me. I was just born by a father who comes from there. Not for those reasons that you know us for. So, given the grassroots engagement that you guys are doing with Triple C,
are
you guys aiming and do you have the next election in the bag?
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When you respond to that question from a hope narrative, we are the next government. We know particularly well that Advocate Nelson Chamisa is going to be there in 2023, this year, to win the election and usher in change. So my response would be that whatever focus that we have is supposed to come in with policy frameworks that change the narrative of the day and not come with a hope narrative that says if or do you think. What we are doing now is just to cement the efforts that were being made, is just to take the liberation struggle baton stick that was being fought for by our great-grandfathers and mothers who were there in the Chimrenga Umvukeli War. But we are now saying enough is enough. We need the transformational agenda to take its course. And that's what we are doing right now. So the CCC is a movement that's going to come with change. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Or it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It says we rather tackle this question and approach it from a hope point of view. Like I said, if there's hope for Israel, then maybe there is hope for Zimbabwe also. So in our closing, with the REAP campaign and you being the Youth Taskforce coordinator, what is your ambition in all of this? What is the end game? Where is this all of this going?
The end game is simple. We want an egalitarian society which recognizes both women and men from a gender balance perspective. We want a stable economic framework which realizes the efforts that are being put by ordinary citizens. We want a society in which politics is for the citizens and comes from the citizens, in which politics is not an animal in which everyone else is afraid of, but anyone else can interact with, in which society can stand up and say their demands and supports to the leaders who will be committed servant leaders who get back to the community. So that's the end game. The end game is a developed nation. The end game is a nation in which we can, as young people, participate and have equal opportunities that will make us compete in or on the national table and be part of the national and global conversation that other nations are having. So that is the end game.
There you had it from Takudzwa Ngadziore. You know what? It's been a great opportunity to sit with a born leader who's given us a story of his journey from back in school, his experience being arrested in this country, and he says you need to not fear. Well, you said the hospital. I don't fear the hospital as much as I fear the police in Zimbabwe. But anyway, thank you very much, Taku, for sharing your story and actually taking time out of your busy schedule to come and join us on Big Talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
And all the best in the next endeavors. And as you continue the journey towards the elections, we wish you nothing but the best. May your hope and your dreams for a better Zimbabwe do come true.
The people shall govern.
That is all that we had for you on today's episode of Big Talk, which is brought to you by the Citizens Voice Network. Remember to like, retweet, comment, share, and follow on all our social media platforms. Until the next episode, it's goodbye for now.